we recommend that you watch the movie before watching our episodes. Hi, welcome back to Inception on yet another perspective. Today we are going to be talking a little bit on the theme of the movie. Swati, we've even in our book Three Coffee Stains Later, we borrowed a lot from Inception, right? So given how psychologically bound it is in the theory of the subject. We've spoken about it in our book in the context of introspection, in context of mental barriers, anxiety, all of those things. So I was wondering, like, while I was watching the movie, one scene that the last sequence of the movie sort of stayed with me, and I realized that when they're going deeper into each level of the dream, they're leaving behind one character at each level. So the first level, Yusuf is left behind, and the second level, Arthur is left behind, and the third level, Eames is left behind, and then only Arya and then Cobb go in. So is there a relevance of this sequence, or does that say anything about our psyche, which is rooted in theory?
Yes. So when I saw the movie for the first time, I think what I really liked was the way we do exactly in therapy, the unlayering of everything, and how one person has to stand guard to that layer so that you can be pulled back out of it. Otherwise, therapy also can end up becoming limbo for a lot of people, right, that they are not able to cope with their real life and they continue to be in therapy forever and ever in their own lives. So each character signifies therapeutically something, and in that as a character also, it is a build-up of a very similar kind. So if we were to say the first person who gets left behind in a very very rainy kind of a backdrop, ऐसा लग रहा है कि everything, you're just drenched completely, is Yusuf. Now Yusuf is the chemist. He is the person who will add the sedative for us to be deciding how many layers lower can we go and how stable can we be when we are unlayering a lot of psyche. So in therapy, the way when we are unlayering, it becomes a lot intense as you're going into the deeper layers. Right. The first thing has to be the willingness, that adding of the sedative to say that now I am embarking on this journey, and that sedative, that chemist is what is going to keep it stable throughout the whole journey. Right. So Yusuf is the one, when you decide to embark on a journey which is inwards, to be looking at a resolution of something which is so deep and hidden that you are hiding it even from your own self, would be the willingness.
Okay.
That willingness will overwhelm you with so much rain and so much, oh my God, will I be able to deal with this and get through to the next level? The second level then comes in as part of the logic. So Arthur is the one who usually sets up. He does the research, he finds out what is going on. He missed out a little, saying the defenses are just so very high, right? So Cobb here comes back and blames him. He's trying to take away attention from the train that came in, and he becomes angry at Arthur, right? The intelligence part of it, which comes into the picture. So you need that intelligence as the second layer to understand what's happening in the deeper layers. We've still not begun to touch on the emotional part of it. Right. So if you follow Cobb's journey in the second level where Arthur is getting left behind, at that point of time also he's using more strategy. We have not begun to address his emotional self yet. Right? So that's the intelligent layer, which doesn't have imagination. The third layer comes in with Eames. Now what, at least for me, Eames was in this film, who was somebody who's excited about doing these things. But when he realizes the risk that they are taking, that you go into a limbo, he becomes very angry and he wants to sit it out. But once he realizes sitting out is not an option, the way he's able to convert into positivity also very fast. Right? So when they talked about, sorry, Arthur failing, in an Inception idea before, Eames says, but you learned from it a little, so we can still go forward. Yeah, when Ariadne is questioning him, we are ruining that one positive relationship he has. And Eames says, no, we are trying to change his relationship with his primary relationship, that's the father. right? By manipulating a little bit of the secondary emotion that we are talking about. So he's somebody who will bring in all the kind of flexibility and changes possible.
Right.
He can impersonate another person. He's able to pull himself back into positivity quite a lot. Because let us understand, in our psyche, it is not temporally and spatially fixed. Look at Nolan's films. One of the things that he flirts with the most is temporal and spatial elements.
Right.
Nothing looks like as though it is working in a time harmony or space harmony. He takes you here and then he takes you there, and the movement is quite a lot. So E stands for that. That shift in temporal, that shift in spatial, that willingness to not get stuck in a chronology or a method. That ability to be able to pull out the big guns and shoot the whole thing. Right? So that is what Eames is. So Eames has to hold that particular place steady, but that's a very frigid zone. You begin to feel मुझसे नहीं हो रहा है, मुझसे नहीं हो रहा है, मुझसे नहीं हो रहा है, right? Your world inside begins to implode quite a lot, because once you go from intelligence to experience, it just feels, let me go back into the fetal position, and everybody's covered in this very big winter suits, and going around in this big motors, and so that iciness is a kind of feeling you get the more deeper that you go into your own psyche. Now Fisher has gone to the next psyche, but Fisher's answers are not to the next psyche, right? He still needs to come back into the frigid zone and then go into the hospital room, right? So Fisher goes into a deeper layer, but his confusion and problems are not as deep as Cobb. So he is revived from there, and then it needs to be continued. Now Ariadne is important. It's no learning for Ariadne. But because Cobb will not be able to manage it alone, she will have to be there to support him.
Right.
To be able to ask the right questions, they go to the next layer of the journey. And when it is about getting Saito, right, it becomes that much more important.
Right.
Okay, that he does it alone. So wahan pe even Ariadne is not there. So every layer is signifying a kind of a psychosocial kind of space if you're going through an inner journey.
Okay.
Gestalt therapy talks about it in a slight theoretical manner. He says we all live an existence of all is well, everything is okay. It's that phony existence.
Right.
If you kind of unlayer that, you begin to feel scared. Oh, even I have problems. There are skeletons in the closet.
Right.
Oh, I don't want to deal with this part of it. Then you go into an impasse. I know my problems, but now what? Right? So Saito is dying in the frigid zone. Eames is still trying to hold positive, and they are almost about to give up in that particular zone, right? Then that next zone of saying, okay, I have moved into the limbo. My main issue is my guilt, and I will confront my main guilt to be able to come out of it. So then you go into that next layer and come back.
Right. Okay. When you explain the layers in that sequence, in one of our previous videos, we spoke about intelligence versus emotion and why we base our identity on the context of our intelligence. Is that then right to think that intelligence, as you said, is the second layer after willingness, becomes a sort of a mask and a defense mechanism for preventing us from going deeper into our own self?
Yes, at any stage of life of introspection, we can stop at that level only, right? Let's take a small example of, there is a phase in therapy where we are saying that we blame outwards so that we are able to experience a little more space to work within ourselves.
Right.
Now, a lot of people are just so happy to say my problems are not because of me, and they are happy in that blaming, that they believe mera to therapy ho gaya, because I have now known that I am not the problem and others are the problem.
Right.
So whatever is a phase can become an ultimate, because that's giving that person peace at that point of time. So the second level also can become peace, in the sense there's an intellectualization of all the issues, right? Oh, this is because of this, this is because of this. And not permitting yourself to go through the emotional pain that is still to come about.
Right.
Right? So you can get stuck at any phase. You could be willing and you could still withdraw. You could get scared of the defenses that have come up, and now you are not able, you are ambushed by that army, you're not able to deal with it. So you can stop there and say, no, let me try and come back to this. All is well, let me not go deeper. Or you can then go into the experiential.
One of the things that I noticed about the movie was we're talking about going into deeper into the dream state and reaching the subconscious and the unconscious levels, but the undertone of the movie is kind of unpleasant and dark, and like a lot of things are happening. It's sinister and violent in a certain way. Would you say that that is the state of our unconscious at all times? Like, is our unconscious so sinister and violent?
It is. It is because it stores just a lot, and it doesn't store it in a very, very, very methodical fashion.
Okay.
It is like you're going to stumble on anything and everything. Like there's a dialogue even Cobb says that, you will have to work with what you find in the mind. You're only going in with the simplest version of the idea. But what comes there, you'll have to have the presence of mind to deal with it, right? So, very simply, similarly shown, because it's a cartoon movie, also in Inside Out. When you see the unlimited space that they show, where there is this elephant that Joy encounters, right? That is like this space. Just a lot of memories everywhere. The memories are there, and to come out of it, they actually have to use a rocket and to be able to launch out of it. In this also, they talk about it as a kick. Right. That you need to be able to go back the layers when you get that particular kick, right? So it is unstructured space, like they have shown in the limbo. Some are looking old and tattered, some are looking absolutely new and fresh, some are looking as though those buildings are falling. So your subconscious is also working while it is not being accessed also. So that is where all of it happens. But if you go to see, there's a very simple thing that they showed in the film, and how simple all of this can be looked at. The children always came in as a distraction.
Right.
That he's not able to see his children's faces, and whenever he's seeing them, he's getting distracted, but he doesn't have to follow them anywhere. In the unstructured space, when he sees where his children are, he knows he's supposed to follow that particular road, and that's going to take him there. So whatever seems like a distraction on the upper layers, in this unstructured space, a lot of those things can become indicators. So is it as dark, as violent, as breaking, restructuring, and looking as new? Yes, our subconscious stores everything that's happening till this 1 second before. It has everything.
Given that there is just so much in our unconscious, and there's just the feeling of getting to there is like a step-by-step process, and it's even when you get there, it's so overwhelming and so overpowering. What do you think is the need to take this journey? Like, what is the movie trying to show in terms of why this journey is important?
So we talk about the concept of reality, saying there is a reality. And to counter that, when Miles tells Cobb, come back to reality, he says your grandchildren are waiting for their father to come back home. That is their reality. Reality also is a conception of the mind, right? And in that conception of the mind, what we feel we connect to the most is a personal choice. So there is the scene where Yusuf takes them into his lab for, seeing the effect of the compound. And there's this very elderly person who is there. And there's this question, why would people want to do this to themselves? And he says, who are you to say otherwise? They come here to wake up, right? And Cobb also says, it's only in my dreams that I'm able to be with Moll, and I'm not ready to let her go. So there is always going to be an inner reality, which is going to be a lot more expansive than we understand about the outside reality. So as much as maybe a physicist can talk about the universe, which is way beyond you and I understanding it. Similarly, when you talk about the collective unconscious also, because the movie picks up shared dreaming.
Right.
It's not talking only about one person's mind. It's talking about one person's mind and through that accessing another person's mind. So that shared dreaming kind of a thing. The collective unconscious also comes in with its own hub of intelligence, with its own hub of resolutions, which have happened over centuries in many, many ways. So whether we want to access that deepest potential, whether it has an outcome or not is a different matter. But whether we want to access that deepest potential, be that pure scientist into our own minds, or we don't want to access it and we want to kind of have a glass of beer and just say life is okay, right? And in that drunkenness stumble upon a little of our anger or a little about our confusion. So that's usually a personal choice.
Right.
But unlayering, discovering a lot more about ourselves can just make us feel more alive to the moment today. That you treat past as a learning. So that brings Lion King into my memory right now, saying the past can hurt, but you can either learn from it or run from it. So the unconscious can hurt, but you can either learn from it or run from it. So the movie only shows that this journey can be as exciting too. It doesn't necessarily need to be a very drag thing saying, say it, only a journal. You'll discover so many blind alleys and so many corners of your own mind and so much more creativity and imagination that lies dormant inside us. So I think it's a choice.
You only find a resolution once you go deep, like how Cobb found his resolution and he was able to let go of his guilt only because he traveled down there and he confronted Maul and he was able to close the loop on that.
Yes.
Yeah. When you were talking about collective unconscious, it also brought to my mind how they go the idea of going into a shared dream versus there's this one point where Ariadne is trying to question Cobb about what is in his subconscious, and he says what that has nothing to do with you, and she says it has everything. How can it not have anything to do with me? You've asked me to share my dream with you, which sort of made me think that all of these geopolitical issues or ideological differences or conflicts that we see today in our everyday lives, that probably come from not from the space of I want to meddle in your life or I want to control how you think, but it's also because we have like this common foundation and a collective unconscious where we are all functioning from. Is that something that
yes, so we'll take up in the most simplest form here. Let's look at the concept of marriage, right? Two people with very different upbringings, with very different life history, they come together to create a newer world, right? If we were to create a barrier and say that we will not talk about my past or we will not talk about my other relationships and we will only look at the marriage, what you'll recognize is there are no answers in this, because what lies is always in the history, right? This person is bringing a history onto the table, this person is bringing a history onto the table, and only when the history is made is when you will be able to figure out whether this is something you can heal and move forward. If that history cannot be at peace, automatically it will interfere. So as much as Cobb tries to put it in a vault, put it in a jail, keep it in one structure, okay, he has learnt the theoretical things out of it, right? There's this dialogue that Arthur says, now you will see Cobb doing what he always says not to do, right? So Mr. Charles ho gaya, ya don't build from your memory ho gaya. These are all learnings that he had, how tricky they were. So it's almost like a parent telling a child, do as I say, not as I do, right? Because I made these mistakes, these are the learnings, so you take and run with the learnings, you don't need to go through the curve. Right? But you recognize that when you're going through the curve, you have to make those big no's also a part of yes. Okay. You have to tell the dreamer you're dreaming. So using truth for an advantage, right? But that can be a very slippery road to follow. So that becomes extremely important here for us to recognize is that all of us who are in relationships, all of us who are trying to collaborate and do things with other people, everything which will require two people to come together will create a chemistry. And the chemistry comes from the characteristics of both the things that are coming about. And that's why shared dreaming and everything works in harmony. In an interview that I heard of Nolan, he was talking about how the different characters for him was a production designer, the studio, the actor, the director, the producer, all of these characters. He said, I know this, and that's why for me this is the setup he worked with. So if you look at cinema, for example, it is one writer's vision, which then is perceived by a director and then collaborated by so many people.
Right.
So there's something shared that all of us have, that we are able to connect with it even as an audience and say, oh, this clicks or this doesn't click, right? Is because the collective unconscious brings all of us together. So to sum up this thought, Carl Jung had a way to say it. You can look at the earth as being separated by water or having pockets of water. So the sea floor is still land.
Right.
It's not water right from here up till the other end of the sphere, right? So whether you look at it as separated lands or pockets of water, that's a choice how we make to look at life. So do I feel you and I are very different, or do I see the way both of us connect? So this movie beautifully says we all connect.
That's such a visual thought. When you spoke about Jung and his statement, I actually pictured that, and it's such a visual description of stating that thought, which is also the movie. It's such a beautiful depiction of bringing all of these abstract concepts together, and we've loved watching the movie and we've loved talking about it till now. If you have any questions or thoughts on the movies that you would like us to discuss, please leave them in the comments below. We'll see you again next time with one more topic from Inception on yet another perspective. Thank you for joining us.